Good evening. This is Jason again. Today's topic discussion is to give an introduction to my research project. I'm doing my research paper on what religious role had on the events prior to, during, and after the American Revolution. To obtain insight into whether the founding of the United States was solely founded on secular ideologies, on Christian principles, or a combination of both. So as I was doing my research, overall what I kind of found was that on both sides, I think some historians, some writers and authors tend to oversimplify one over the other. The idea that the United States was solely founded on secular ideologies or was solely founded on Christian principles. I found it really hard to do because in reality, the research I did, my research, actually kind of shows, hey, they did look at rationalism, but they also, a lot of them had very spiritual views, and a lot of spiritual figures did influence. So overall, the idea that the nation was founded solely on Christian principle or that it was solely founded on secularism is really an oversimplification. For example, Stephen K. Green's book, Inventing a Christian America, The Myth of the Religious Founders, argues against the idea that the nation was founded through religious principles. He does mention, for example, that the founders were, for the most part, spiritual. He doesn't try to deny that, but he believes that influence was overall kind of small in the founding of the nation. So he kind of he downplays that idea that their spirituality played a role and their religious principles played a role. I also found that on the other side of the coin that some of the Christian writers that are individuals that tries to claim that the nation was founded on Christian principles tend to downplay the other side of that coin. They downplay the rationalism aspect. For example, Mark David Hall in his book "Did America Have a Christian Founding?" He admits that he does admit that the founders weren't trying to create a theistic country. He's not denying that, but he downplays the rationalism because he says. He essentially argued that most of the founding fathers weren't even deists, because that tends to be what he says that most people tends to focus on. Hey, the founders were deists, and so they're overemphasizing that rationalism. So he's doing just the opposite, trying to prove his point by downplaying the role of rationalism, and they were indeed influenced by other individuals outside of Christianity, right? So my finding ultimately led me to see that the founding nation probably lies somewhere in between. There was both Christian and secular principles that helped shape the founding of the United States. For example, you had individuals like George Whitefield who emphasized the idea that religious freedom, and also he had a role in really uniting people for the American Revolution. And then you have John Locke, who was more on the rationalist side, right? So those are two individuals that influenced the founding fathers, showing that both, hey, Christianity and rationalism together help shape. So I think as historians we have to be careful about oversimplifying roles, and just picking and choosing what empirical evidence that we want. If we have empirical evidence that supports both, then I like to think that probably the truth lies somewhere in between it, if that makes sense. And that's why when I read Greg L. Frazier's book, The Religious Beliefs of America's Founder, he attempts to combine both thoughts. He calls it theistic rationalism, and that's where although the founding fathers didn't create the United States as a theistic nation, that religion still played a role, as well as rationalism. So you have a theistic rationalism, and I think that's where overall how my research project have went. So I think a lot of historians oversimplifies their historic evidence, presents it, and rather really the truth probably fits somewhere in the middle. And I hope my paper will reflect my findings and conclusion. Thank you. Have a good day.